Let's start with sort of the pretty straightforward what's happening in mobile. It's a new world. It's changed dramatically. It's always stunning to me that people don't realize on January 1 of 2007, the mobile world essentially did not exist when the iPhone was introduced in January. So a lot has changed. Tell us what you're thinking.
Oh, boy. No, you're right. And, whenever you and I were talking about this last night, the delta between when you first hear a technology and you know it's coming, but then actually timing it, and we talked about 99 mobile and WAP and how it all developed, but the real moment happened in 2007. For us, I mean, it's a huge shift. It is literally, the first computing, paradigm which will actually touch most of the world. The entire PC industry reached about 1.7 billion people after 30, 40 years. And, I can see a clear line path to 5 to 6 billion people having mobile. Everything in mobile, if you step back and analyze it from the intrinsics on, it does truly look like a 10x opportunity compared to the desktop world. And take a simple thing like photos. That number is literally 10x. If there were 100 million photos getting shared, it'll soon be, I think at least this year, it'll break 1 trillion photos. So everything you look at it, it's a true 10x growth on mobile. So for us, from our side, we are trying to internalize it. Obviously Android plays a big role, and we'll probably, we shipped over 1 billion phones last year, right, on Android. And so for us, when we see the scale of mobile, we probably will ship, in looking at this year, 4,000 distinct devices, right, across the globe running Android. So it's a mind-boggling scale. And the ecosystem is incredibly vibrant. I see things which each month, it's something completely different from what I would have expected. Just yesterday, I was reading in the journal about an app I had never heard of, but it's called Wish, and allows you to directly buy from China, right? And they just show pictures of no brand, apparel, retail, clothing, etc. They valued at $3 billion. And people can buy it at 1/10 the price. So it's a direct model from China to here, just mediated by the phone. And literally, I think the sky seems to be the limit of what you can reinvent and reimagine with having the phone as an immediate computing device.
Yeah, Sundar was mentioning last night that they ship the slowest way possible to make it as cheap as possible. So it's a two-month delivery.
That's
but
right.
it is dirt cheap. It's as low as you can go.
Yeah. And so, but these are models which are so counterintuitive and disruptive. And for example, another example is meeting with the founder of Ola in India, and they talk about how, just like in India, most of us never had landlines. We've talked about how long it took us, probably a 7-year wait to get a landline. And then
that was my first startup. We were talking about it took. They told me 7 years to get a phone line.
Yeah, there you go. And then cell phones came, right? And so you never. I think only 10 million people in India have ever seen a landline, right? And then you bypass and move over to cell phones. But you take something like Ola, and then there's a chance, can you bypass car ownership, right? Compared to a place like here where most people own cars, can you completely bypass car ownership? And to me, to think about that, the fact that something, because of a smartphone, something like that is possible, right?
Yeah.
It's just a bit mind-boggling. So we see innovations at scale in the ecosystem. I think what's important is, from our side, we are exposing a platform, and we want to make it more powerful and unprecedented API access to the platform, right? Literally, if you expose a computing platform with the power of the cloud behind it, and give APIs to folks, what's possible. So that's the way we think about it.
The way I've viewed the phone world and the technology world in general is it causes a change in the pattern of usage. Mm-hmm. Apps essentially didn't exist on phones before about 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. The concept didn't really exist. Mm-hmm. What patterns of usage do you think will surprise us in the future. I mean, Facebook, of course, went off the sharing pattern, which was new, or a better implementation of MySpace. What else do you see coming that could surprise us?
So, a couple things. One is, for how remarkable this mobile ecosystem has been, from my standpoint, there are two ways I think about it. One is, I mentioned the API point, something like Uber was possible because of location and on the phone. So when I look at identity, payments, other important primitives, and you actually push that into the platform, I think you can have a whole new set of ranges possible, because then every application within its world can expose many things on top of it. But to me, the second bigger thing is, for how much mobile is advanced, there's a part of mobile which feels remarkably like the early days of the web, but Yahoo directory-like structure, right? You have a set of applications, and you have a set of icons, and you're clicking and navigating through it. So it's both impressive in how far we have come along, but at the same time, you look back and you can find the head of content. It's tougher to find the deeper tail. And how do you re-engage with all this? So the user experience seems somewhat basic. So it's both true. I think it's come a long way, but it has a long way to go. So for me, the patterns which will change is, over time, I think the phone, because of its immediacy, it's a powerful computing device. It's great to use. But as a user, you are working it a lot, right? And you are opening up, clicking icons, trying to figure things out. Today, if you had a dinner reservation or something like that, and somebody emails you and said, please change this dinner reservation, that thing to do on a phone is a pretty complicated thing. You have to fiddle with like 5 to 6 things and get it done. So I think getting to a much more intelligent way of where computing
so you're
works.
Talking a real implementation of Google Now, where
yes,
it anticipates what you want.
That's right. And so, I generally call this, assist layer. How do you think about, if you go back to the history of computing has mainly been about automating things, right? So the entire PC industry was automating your workspace. If you take a simple application like calendar, you would do it in a paper calendar, and today you have nice programs on which you just put in, somebody manually tells all these things. But if tomorrow, if Vinod and I want to meet once a month, a nicer version of calendar would be just to say, hey, Vinod and I want to meet once a month, and it kind of makes it happen. It looks at this pattern, my pattern, and figures out the ideal time. Or maybe the calendar application says, hey, it's a nice day outside, you haven't gone for a walk in a while. It might be good to do your next meeting while walking with this person, etc. That's an assistive way of doing things. Generally, I think computing needs that push. So for me, when I look at mobile, everything is still along the lines of us telling everything what to do. And I think getting to the next stage where like Google now does, but using things like deep learning and machine learning to take all this to the next stage, I think would be huge.
So any sense of the spaces in which these new experiences will be created, like sharing, like Travis was here, at least he was here till 1:30 last night, for those of you who were still awake. You've talked about Ola Cab. There's sort of, those are known things. Where do you think the next big app, or which areas are most promising for adding something new?
To me, at least from my perspective, when I look at things, I do think generally the way we are extending Android and computing is, you'll have more powerful APIs with more access to data. So people in different spaces can use it to create very, very, intelligent layers. Companies like Jawbone are potentially doing that in the fitness space. But overall, because of all the push that's happening in wearables, I think you will see new interesting things getting created there. What else would I say? Healthcare generally seems like a huge area of opportunity. When I look at things like VR, maybe we spoke about it yesterday, given the fact that when you look at an area and when you look at Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook pushing it, you are going to see big changes there in a few years. But how do you create content on top of it, right? And so, literally how everything we have done in the content world could change. And that's not the side of the area which a lot of us are thinking about. So how do you capture the real world? How do you create immersive experiences? these are all problems to be solved, right? And literally, when I look at it, and what Flip did a while ago, or the fact now you have cameras in every phone and we capture photos and videos, but you extend that to things like full 3D immersive capture of real world. It's not a problem which has been solved, right? And so, so I think there are many new use cases like this, which will completely get transformed. So.
Or we'll wait for the next WhatsApp kind of application. Talk a little bit more about, and you started to talk about it, Google's done some things in AR, VR, as has Microsoft and Facebook. We've talked a little bit about wearables. You mentioned Jawbone. Tell me how that part of the ecosystem, how the computing environment evolves from that end of really small devices, pervasive 24-hour devices. It's generally not known that the Jawbone devices on average, and maybe I'm giving out confidential information, is worn about by the average user 23.5 hours. No other device is worn that much. So it's starting to change sort of the kind of things you can do with them. There's that end. Other end is cloud computing and your enterprise services. Tell me how you see the computing environment changing.
A few ways. We approach it a few ways. One is thinking about the phone as the center, effectively, the remote control by which you control many other computing in your lives. So that's one way we think about it. That's how, if you think about something like Chromecast, that's what it does, right? So use your phone, you kind of get computing on your big display in front of you. It's the way we are approaching things like, if you walk into a car, your phone kind of powers the computing experience in your car. And so increasingly, and your watch is connected to your phone. And so, you can think about the phone as effectively a remote. And computing is getting pervasive. And wherever you can effectively imagine a glass, you can have computing over time and a display, and the phone powers that. So that's an important direction you'll see us continue pushing. An extension of that is, for me, how do you bring the physical world online, right? And it's Internet of Things. And so even there, the way we are approaching it is taking your phone and making it the hub through which everything around the phone becomes intelligent, right? And so how do you...
And we've talked about
how these things could evolve.
Physical things having applications.
That's right.
As you know, we discussed that last time.
Yeah, and so that's an exciting area for us, and it's consistent with how we think about the phone driving those experiences. Beyond that, I don't think computing will always work as you dealing with a discrete black rectangle in front of you and interacting with it that way. It's too limiting in many cases. So I do think you will see really immersive forms of computing. And all of us are working on VR and AR. So we're taking that, it's a big effort from us. Externally, we have mainly done it as cardboard, which was a cute little way to consume VR on a phone. But it's a serious effort. And for me, there's obviously early applications of entertainment, et cetera. But going back to my previous example of truly capturing real world, real time, and tying that to a VR-like experience, will be very profound. And it'll take us a few years to get there. But that's, to me, it looks like a big new step forward. And wearables is obviously an area we are working on. But again, those things we think about it as phone at the center of it. You have sensors, you have displays everywhere. How do they interact with your phone, and you add intelligence on top of it? So.
You briefly referred to machine learning. It feels to me that is one of the largest new initiatives at Google that's highly differentiated and probably fairly far ahead of where the rest of the industry is. Tell me how important it is to both Google's future and society in general, because, as you know, Larry has a lot of views on where it starts to affect society. Talk about that whole area and why it's such a big deal, or if you agree it is.
No, I mean, it is. I mean, it's a huge area of investment for us. Most of what we have done today, these are all coded systems. Even when you look at our large systems like search or ads, et cetera, these are hand-coded systems. To truly, have learned systems do those things is very pretty profound, right? And we've made, if I look at sequentially the year-on-year advance in machine learning, and primarily these have so far played out in fields like voice recognition, image recognition, machine translation, and so on. The quality improvements over the last 3 to 4 years have been staggering, right? And it's been because of things like deep neural nets and over the last couple of years. But to give one example, the word error rate when you talk to Google, these have come down from it used to be over 25%, and now they are in the low single digits, right? Just in the last 2.5 years, primarily due to deep neural nets and a few other things. But these are big advances, and so we are doing that. The next wave is taking all this and what you've seen in things like now, using machine learning to drive more intelligent use cases. And whereas software, these are learned systems which automatically start figuring out better things for users in an intelligent way. So that should be pervasive across computing. So we're very excited about it. I think from there on, I look at the growth in machine learning. There is a version of Moore's law which is happening there. To do machine learning, you need a lot of computing. Yeah, you need a lot of computing, but the actual underlying computing architecture needs to evolve to support machine learning with special purpose GPUs, et cetera. And so all that shift is beginning to happen. So you combine all that. I mean, you are talking about exponential growth curves in these areas, and so that's where a lot of the future debates happen around where is all this leading up to. For me, we still have work left to do. So I take the view that you need to let these technologies develop further. Sometimes I feel the concerns are too overstated too early on, but these are important debates to have about.
And you're talking about the AI,
that's right.
The singular AI kind of Elon Musk, Stephen Hawkins kinds of.
That's right. And I saw the Economist cover this week. I think it's a very good read on AI. And the picture is, actually the back of a man's head with a USB port to it. So I think all of us are beginning to think further ahead and understand the implications of it. But we have to understand. It just took 3 years ago. We couldn't quite recognize a picture of a cat accurately, but we can today. But that's a lot of progress in the last 3 years. And so, to me, I see a lot of practical applications, and I do think it'll drive society changes in terms of jobs, and we all need to be thoughtful about those things. Yeah. But I'm just excited at how many areas where we can make a big difference.
Yeah. No, I'm always surprised at how fast that area is moving, and whatever was current 2 years ago is no longer relevant.
That's right.
Even the hardware systems, even the connectivity between GPUs, just every area seems to be changing dramatically. I want to go to the audience very soon, but let's talk just a little bit about enterprise and what Google's viewed as a consumer company.
Yeah.
Not an enterprise company, but I know you have major enterprise and apps initiatives. Talk a little bit about that.
I mean, it's at times I joke around and say if we spin out our enterprise business, it'll be one of the bigger IPOs in the valley, right? And so relative to our core business, it kind of doesn't stand out, but it's a very healthy business for us. It's growing at a very significant base. For me, enterprise over time is a deeper play for us. We've obviously had Google Apps. We're putting a lot of effort behind Android for work and Chrome. So driving the underlying platform shift in the enterprise is a big thing. And obviously, we have the deeper cloud platform effect so that people, enterprises can power their cloud through Google. So if you take it holistically and look at it with that breadth, I think it's a much bigger surface area for us. We have tried to walk the line of, consumerization of enterprise, and so, so it's obviously we play differently from, how traditional enterprise companies play. But when I look at things like Slack come around, I think it validates, Slack, while specifically built for enterprise, kind of feels like a very consumer application, and so I think that shift needs to happen deeper within enterprises. driving fun, important, useful applications which people love using, right? And that shift, I think, will benefit us. And so you do need a lot more disruption like that. So we tend to play the long-term game here. We want to be careful not to go back into the past and just build very, very complex software for the enterprise. So how do you have an architecture for the future based on platforms and APIs where things are easy to build and use? And that's the long-term way by which we are approaching it.
So we've talked about this also. Google I/O is next week. And everybody here promises not to tweet anything. Give us, it's probably
the laugh isn't very reassuring.
Danny, shut up. Give us a hint of what's coming, what's important. I know there's a lot expected.
You will, last year, for us, what we did with Lollipop and material design and taking Android to many new form factors was a big evolution in Android. You will see us complete that story even more this year about how we are taking Android and the scale we are getting in computing working beyond just your phones all around you. So I think that's a big area you'll see us talk a lot about. The second thing being this notion of going back to the core of what Google is about, our mission around information. How do we do a better job of it? Thinking about that in the mobile context. How can we be more assistive and intelligent in terms of making computing work for users? So those are the big themes you will see. Specifically, we have a lot of announcements underneath that. A third part of it is, just a developer platform. Sometimes we forget I/O is a developer conference, and so a lot of it is going back and saying, as a developer writing mobile applications, end-to-end, across Android, across iOS, across the web, how do we make it a much more powerful cross-platform experience? And so there's a lot of things we are doing to make it much better for developers. So those are the main themes, and just a week away, so hopefully he'll come and see it.
We'll look forward to reading about it. I want to open, we have 5 more minutes left. I want to open it up to questions. Danny, we can start with you.
This may feel like a Luddite question, but I think one of the things that keeps me from moving my entire world into Chrome is Office. And I'm struck by, while so many other Google products seem to get better and better and better, how Docs in particular feels like nobody's home. And then I heard mention, Bill Gates mentioning last night how important that franchise was to them. And then you said we're kind of looking about in the long term. Should I infer from that you don't care about that and that there's some sort of bigger play beyond that's leaving me behind? Or
it's not that we don't care about it. So first of all, our internal numbers on Docs have only grown up to the right ever since the day of Docs, right? And so we see healthy growth for Google Docs. But we get this question asked a lot. Part of it is, do you define Docs as what Office has done? And an Office occupies a unique space. It is, in the history of computing, one of the most successful applications. And it does certain things so well, and has done it well for 30 years. And so there's this canonical question of, if you use Docs in the context of what Office doesn't fully deliver, it works in certain cases shiningly well, especially around collaboration. But when it comes to powerful capabilities, fidelity, et cetera, how well it works, how does it integrate with your contacts, calendar, et cetera, that's not the area we shine. So we've known that. Part of it is thinking through the context of productivity in the context of mobile for the next 10 years, and we want to make sure we are pushing in that direction rather than pivoting back and trying to fill a hole of what are perceived gaps. And so it's a trade-off we struggle with. It's not an easy answer for us. I referenced Slack earlier. So when people talk about productivity, is Slack productivity? I think the answer is yes. And so, how do you think about something like that in the future, and how do you adapt around those things? So for me, building the next wave is equally important. And so in the context of enterprise and consumer productivity, I think we straddle these two lines. And so we don't always, it's not the perfect application for everyone, right? And so that's what you feel. But our goal isn't to try and be better than Office, right? And if that is, we will do a whole different set of things. And so that's the context in which it gets played out.
Is the goal to get me to live entirely in Chrome?
No. Right. And so first of all, it's a mobile world, it's a cross-platform world. All these productivity applications for us to do a good job needs to work well on the web, in Chrome, and Android, and iOS, right? And so at a minimum. So you have to think about it cross-platform. And there's a whole set of changes coming there too, but it's just pivoting and building the future up.
No, it is interesting because HTTP had its limitations because it was designed for something else.
Yeah.
But the mobile world opens up a whole new way to do apps, the responsiveness and the capability. It'll be interesting to see where Android work goes.
Yeah, and by the way, most of the productivity is still done. I can see it with all the laptops open in front of you. So while we've talked about mobile tremendously, productivity is unique in the sense that most people, if you use the traditional definition of productivity, still do it on the traditional form factors. So which is why some of these newer things, because trying to build a mobile experience, it quite doesn't play out on these form factors yet. So it's a more complicated, deeper, nuanced thing, but obviously it's a good question.
Yeah, Vivek.
Hi, Sundar. This is Vivek. So search is a core business for Google, but if you look at how the search has evolved, like if I want to look for a restaurant, I no longer go and search. I go to Yelp, and if I want to have a movie review, I go to an app inside. As much as I use Google a lot, like for specific searches, I go into the app and go instead of going to Google. So do you see a trend shifting because there's a core business for Google?
Well, it's a question which we've dealt with from day one of Google, right? And we've generally embraced, at the time we used to call it as navigational queries, even in the early days of web, right? Like, people would come to Google all the time and type eBay and go to eBay, right? And so, generally we've taken the view that you want to be, you don't want to create friction, right? So you want to give users what they want. So it's a fine balance as to how you do these things. The difference is in mobile over time, people do expect, people just don't want, just basic information back, right? They want deeper end-to-end solutions over time. And so for me, that gives us an interesting opportunity, and we can still do it with third parties, right? So for example, if something like Google Now is telling you to do something, it could be still based on something which is in Yelp or OpenTable or something like that, right? Now could magically suggest that you need to do something today, and the answer could come from a third party. So generally, over time, the way information flows, how we can be more assistive, the answer will again involve working with third parties. So, that new world, that evolution of search is underway. And so, I've always taken the view, you want to take a long-term view, focus on what users are wanting, and try and deliver against that, and worry less about, does that mean something is going, value works in different ways. So I think, we take a long-term view on those things.
So I want to finish there with one last question for you, which is on the mind of a lot of people. How should startups work well, or how can they do better at working with Google?
Yeah. In many ways, first of all of you work very well with Google. You just work based on APIs. We build things like Android, and you're all building great applications at a high level. That's true. I do care, having run platforms for a while, I do care about building ecosystems, deep ecosystems, and a big part of our developer conference next week is how do we, for startups, for application developers in general, how does Google present a better interface overall? Sometimes we can be too complex to navigate. We have too many offerings and so on. So we are working on things like that. We are very active in M&A. If you guys have interesting things, please do reach out to us. But overall, look, we care about building viable platforms and ecosystems on which a lot of you can build great businesses. So I often hear Android has some of the deepest API accesses, in general in computing, right? And we literally expose many core things of the platform which other platforms don't expose. And so, in some ways, it's one of the deepest relationships possible because it's based on software and APIs rather than people talking. So, we are very active in M&A, probably one of the most active companies in the world. And so, I'm sure we'll we'll have many touch points with a lot of you, and so look forward to that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.